So here we are, the NBRA with Adam Murray from Aviva, and we're going to be talking about Adam Murray and his historical, famous, successful life in the automotive industry. So first question is, can you tell me a little bit about Mr. Adam Murray? Where did you go to school? What did you do when you come out of school? What have you done with, what brought you to this point?
So that's interesting. Thanks for your kind remarks, Tom. So I'm 65 years old and I'm married to a lovely wife called Liz. I've got two girls just to start the journey, Kim and Sarah.
Yeah.
And I'm grandfather to boys, Cole, Arlo and Ollie. So I went to school. My first ever school was in a place called South Parks Primary School in Glenrothes, which is a town in Fife. It's about now 75,000 people. Probably at that time about 500 people, tiny little place. And I grow. And guess what? The first week in school, believe it or not, I managed to be, they were still building the school around the pupils. And I was leaning back like that on lunch break, and somebody pushed, or some kids pushed a big sandstone block and took the top right off my thumb.
Oh, you're kidding.
And I'm serious. And I went like that, walked up to a staff room, and the teacher came to the door because I tapped at the door and she went, "What?" And I showed her my thumb and she fainted.
Oh, first impressions, Adam.
So that was a great start to school. I went to that school for about 6 months after I came back from injury, it took about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I went to a different school then called Rimbleton. So I grew up in Glenrothes 5, and I went to schools all the way through my schooling era. Glenrothes, Glenwood Junior High School was the last school. And then I went on to Technical College in Kirkcaldy and Cooper, 2 different places in Fife, and just done some interesting motor vehicle sort of initial studies.
Yeah.
That was it. How did I get to where? I got a job as a panel beating apprentice. I had no idea what that meant. Panel beating, didn't know what that meant. The guy that I spoke to in the repairer that I first went to was a Ford dealer, said to me something along the lines, "Do you fancy being a panel beater?" And I went, "I don't know what that is." He went, "See that guy over there repairing that paraffin machine? That is a panel beater." Well, what the heck's that got to do with repairing cars? I worked there till I was about 18, and a guy drove in one day to pick a vehicle up and take it to his body shop to repair it. And he got talking to me, and by 18, I was doing extremely well on repairing cars. I'd repaired 3 cars, and they said, "What the things do you do?" "I put front ends on these cars." And they said, "Nah, you never done that." I said, "I did." And he spoke to another guy that worked there, who was my journeyman, and he said, "We did. That's his work." So he offered me a job and took me to his business. I stayed there for many years. I was about 28, 29, 27 maybe. I went to work for a group called the Donald Heggie Group in Fife, and they had about 5 or 6 outlets. And it was like a transformation from working from a family-owned business where he wouldn't spend money to develop the premises. What led me to leave was just the lack of progression in terms of my skills. I was being used as opposed to being taught to repair cars. Going to Heggie's, there were about, in the branch that I worked in, about 40 people. We were repairing a huge number of vehicles every week, and it was a very competitive environment. So the panel beaters basically looked upon, they judged you, and every single job you done got scrutinised by everybody, and it actually made you take pride in your work and drive good repairs out the door. Ended up foreman working for Heggie's in a different branch in Dunfermline. They had just built a custom built site and they couldn't make it work. So he asked me if I'd go down and try and resolve it. And I went there for about 18 months. And one day a guy who changed my life, actually, I didn't realise at the time, came along to meet my body shop manager, a guy called Alan Johnston. And this guy's name, who came from Commercial Union, was Paul Daniel. Now, you wouldn't forget a name like that in a hurry.
No.
And
Pretty magical, isn't it?
Mr. Magic, pretty magical. Aye. So we were looking at a case for a company called Enco Express, a Mark III 1.3 gear Escort 5-door blue metallic, hit on the right-hand front corner. And I had deliberately taken some things out of the assessment to make it repairable. And he was asking me loads of questions about it. Why you not got it down for the jig, laddie? I said, I have got it down for the jig, but I can't charge you for it because if I put that money on, you'll just write the car off.
Right.
And it became obvious to him that I knew commercially how to repair cars, but I also understood the economics of it to make it was going to be a bona fide repair. So he left the building, never thought any more, and about 30 minutes later, I get a phone call from him to say, look, I met you, I've interviewed 60 guys to do this job, can't find somebody suitable, I think you're my man.
All right.
And he invited me to an interview in Edinburgh with Commercial Union, and guess what? I got the job. And I worked there for a couple of years, and I done really well. And at that point, they asked me to transfer into a different role. So I became an account exec selling insurance for a year. And I'd done it on a sailor basis. And it was, see if I liked it, I was quite successful. I took the account from 6.5 million to 13 million pounds in a year. But I hated it. I didn't like the job. So based on my sailor return basis, I returned back to engineering. And for a couple of years, I worked in projects, writing manuals, describing how to do the job.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, I'd been at it a couple of years, I felt quite privileged to be able to do that. And about probably another 3 years on from that, I got a job as a regional manager with a choice of Birmingham or Bristol for CGNU, where we had just joined as a relationship. And basically, so I moved down to the southwest, sunny Bristol, near to Bristol West, where I basically ran a team of 31 engineers for a period of time. And during that time, I made some significant changes, bringing in bits and pieces of processes, improvements, something called area management, just little initiatives to drive lower cost to the business for the engineers and actually make them more productive.
Yeah.
So eventually, I was offered another job as when it got redefined, like Aviva does. Every 10 minutes, we're redefining the business, shaping it and moving it to a different level. I was offered a job as a regional person in a different role, and I chose not to do that. And but I'd expressed an interest in the technical job that might come up because the guy was due to retire. And that job came up, and the guy who offered me the first job phoned me up and said, that job's on the board if you want to apply. And I said, like, I'm just applying now, so just take it as my application. A week later, I got the job. And I've been in this role since 2007. And in that time, I've had lots of fun and a few challenges to overcome, as you can appreciate, in a business this size. I've made some great friends in the industry on both sides of it. You know, repairers are equal to me. We have both got a job to do. We play an important part in delivering a customer service. It's really important that when we repair cars, that they are repaired correctly. And that led me down the sort of path of looking at repair standards, apprentice programs that train and develop people. And I've always been involved in the Institute of Automotive Engineer Assessors. I've been the president twice, and I've also led the education team there, and basically been involved in it for about 20 years, until recently when, due to my wife's current health situation, which causes me a bit of discomfort, I decided to start taking a step back from certain things to give me more time to spend with Liz and the family.
Well, family's important.
So
there's nothing more important.
No, there is nothing more important than your family. But I'm a bit of a workaholic, and I love my job. I get up every day. I'm one of these guys. I've worked in Aviva 31 years, over 31 years. The day off sick in my life, and basically I've been very fortunate and I've been healthy. So, but the main reason for that is that I actually get up in the morning, punch in the air, because I love my job. I really
Yeah.
enjoy it. I like what I do. People I work with. I actually love the challenge of change. I'm a change advocate. I like staying the same, because if you stay the same, I was once told by a pretty knowledgeable guy, you're going backwards, you're moving backwards at 5% per year minimum.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know how passionate you are for the industry. So let me take you back to the start of that journey then, Adam. What were the type of vehicles that you first started working on?
So the very first vehicle that I actually repaired in a body shop was an Austin A40. And it needed a bumper, a headlamp, and a wing and front panel repair. It was a blue pea green colour, about the colour of the NBRA stripe.
Yeah, yeah.
And I ended up buying that car off somebody sometime later, and I bought it, and it had a registration number of 1620 SM. Later in my life, I sold that registration number for a few £100, and it made me smile because I bought the car for 15 quid.
Well, there you go then. An investment well worth having. And then, so,
Yeah.
you know, if you, yeah, I mean, we'll go on to technology later, but, you know, from that vehicle there, changing that wing, the headlamp, to compared to changing something on today's modern vehicle, it was so simplistic, wasn't it?
Yeah, but you were dealing with a different medium. The material was all one type of material. You could hit it with a ball peen hammer and it wouldn't move. And it was robust, and it was, you know, back in the day, it was using your wits on how to repair cars as opposed to using technical equipment to help you repair cars.
Yeah.
It wasn't scientific as it is today. As long as everything lined up reasonably well and the car drove up the road straight, and the paintwork was shiny and they're more or less the same color, customers accepted it then.
Yeah, I can remember the Ford Sierra being launched and it being advertised as having the first crumple zones, dedicated crumple zones for crash effectiveness. And now you think back on that, and it was so primitive compared to what's going on now. It's just mad. So
I remember that Ford Sierra as well. And one of the things that sticks, putting front ends on car every week, a different car every single week, maybe twice a week.
Yeah.
And I always remember across a scenario where I was welding the front chassis leg into the bulkhead, and a porous sort of reaction came about as a result of the weld. I'd never seen that before, and that was the first ever experience of becoming involved in high strength steel.
Yeah.
When we analysed the reason why and found out what we needed to do, that started to actually ignite ambition to look at methods more closely.
Yeah.
And that is an early indication of me thinking something just isn't right here, and this shouldn't be doing this. Why is it doing it? So I would go away and research and find out what type of materials we're dealing with, and how we overcame the problem.
Yeah.
So,
and and it's still going on now, right? So you're still looking at methods, you're still analyzing what's going on with the vehicles. So yeah. So is there any moment or memory in your life then, Adam, that stands out for you? Absolutely anything. Could be.
So that you're going to be really interested in this. I judge and show dogs as well as actually repair cars and lead an engineering team, and I've done that for 40 odd years. So one day I was preparing a friend's dog that he was a publican, he didn't know anything about dogs, so he asked me to get him a good dog. So I found him a good dog, and I was getting it ready to go into a dog show in Edinburgh at the SKC, Scottish Kennel Club, and this redhead, this mad woman, came running up like a banshee and asked me, "Oh, let me see your dog, it's fabulous." And I said, "Look, honey, if you could just step back a minute, this dog's going in the ring in a minute. If you come back in about 10-15 minutes once it's all over, then you can have a look at my dog." And that was the start of a lifelong friendship between two people that are absolutely dedicated to Cocker Spaniels for over 40 years. And I've been to Australia to visit this individual, and she's been over here to visit me many times. And it just shows you how friendship can start and what can spark it off as an interest.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know where you get the time to do all these things, if I'm honest. I mean, I know you show.
So that to get the time to do it, Tom, is something that's in everybody. It's about discipline, isn't it? It's about dividing your time up into segments to allow you to have a work-life balance. So I couldn't be the person I am today if I didn't get away from trade for a period of time every week without fail.
Yeah.
And just having the time to spend with dogs, which has nothing to do with my day job, and to become a championship show judge, and I've been to countries all over the world judging dogs. God knows why, but I do. And it just gives you a release that's fantastic and cements all the values of well-being.
Can I ask you, you've obviously been to Crufts, have you judged at Crufts?
Never judged at Crufts, and I'll probably never judge at Crufts for different reasons. But what I would say is I've won many, many classes at Crufts with different dogs.
Yeah.
And I've had real, in my lifetime, I've had some really good dogs that I've been very fortunate. I'm really extremely good at picking up dogs. So I'll pick a puppy 8 weeks and actually nurture it to become something that's really special. And a lot to do with trimming and feeding, but a lot is how you interact with the dog. It's no different to people, Tom. If you walk in a room and ignore somebody, they will ignore you. A dog, if you go in a room and start to respond to it in a specific way, the dog will respond to you in a specific way. And it's quite interesting to watch how some people who struggle with the behavior of a dog can actually learn in a few minutes how to deal with it.
Yeah, no, I've got 2 dogs. I've got 2 cockapoos, and I absolutely agree with you. It's, you know, you see something like a Rottweiler, right? And a lot of people are frightened of it, but it's not the dog's fault. It's how that dog's been nurtured and brought up. But yeah, so I absolutely agree with you there, but we're going off tangent on my little theories. But yeah, no, this is probably going to lead on to, you know, achievements or contributions that you're most proud of. And I know you, like you've said, you've been part of the IAEA and you've judged at top level for dogs. You've showed dogs at top level, and you're a very senior person within a corporate insurance company. And then you're a father, you're a granddad, and obviously a husband. So there's lots of things to go at. But, you know, could you put your finger on any one of those?
Yeah, and so I did give some real thought to this, and actually, if I'm looking at this selfishly from a work perspective, one of the proudest moments for me was being asked to chair the technical steering group that was going to rewrite BS 10125 in 2017. Just to get an acknowledgement like that from your peers and people you respected actually gave me a real sort of buzz and a sense of people having confidence in me. And more recently, just recently, in fact, I was elected to the ABP influencers body shop industry.
I've seen that. Yeah.
And when you get recognition like that, Tom, when you're actually voted for by people that you have to have come into contact with at some point, because they wouldn't know who you were otherwise.
Yeah.
And I'm just a humble guy in Glasgow who got lucky, I guess. And my father and mother brought me up to believe in standards, and I played football when I was a kid for pretty good teams, including a senior team. I'm not going to mention their name because it can cause discord.
Celtic or Rangers.
I'm not going to tell you which one, you can guess. But what I would say is that the lessons learned there were all about presentation. It's about being on time and being ready to actually undertake the task in hand. And these are important values that a lot of people miss out on. They just don't finish the off, you know.
No, and I've had the pleasure of knowing you for probably about 6 years now, 7 years, and I've known that, you know, when you're on a project, you steer the project, you're actively involved in it, and you know it's got to come to fruition, and that's something that I admire about you. I mean, that brings us on to, you know, you've invested a lot of time into the industry. Apprentices, repair and glazing training sector group, salvage steering group, the UCP, the IAEA, and recently recycled parts standard group. Deciding to be so involved would have been hard because there's only so many plates you can spin. What was going through your mind and why? Because like you said, you've got to be disciplined, but how do you pick
So within the role that I do for Aviva, I'm dead privileged that we repair a huge number of vehicles, and we interface with many different customers and many repair situations, some of which go completely wrong. And I became very consciously aware of the lack of standards within the industry. And this is not a one-dimensional problem. It's led me to being supportive to give something back and introduce a structure and deliver safe, compliant repairs. That was the objective that I had in my mind. I was looking at things where I thought back over how I was developed as an apprentice, and I thought it was appalling that there was no real coaching. It was just, there's a job, get on with it, basically. And it was down to your luck or good judgment whether a job turned out right or wrong. And that's what went on in those days. Apprentices were just, a part of a mechanical sort of exercise. There's an easy job, just go and fix that job. Where I personally don't think that's the right way to do it, because I believe it's lifelong learning. Everybody learns as they go through life, and you wouldn't be the person you are today if you hadn't learned through poor experiences as well as good experiences. So we all make mistakes. It's about learning from those mistakes. But what interests me was to set up structures to help people who weren't given the chance at school or didn't have that type of mindset, to allow them to advance in a technical way through an industry which can be rewarding, and where they can make a living and actually fulfill whatever potential they've got at different levels.
If you look at the industry, there's quite a few successful people, aren't there, in the automotive industry? I mean, I came away from school with not many qualifications, and I consider myself, lucky to have got into that industry. And there's a lot of repairers that are successful, and senior people I know of in insurance industries came from a similar background, where you'd look at school and you think, back in my day, you're never going to be a rocket scientist, so potentially you could repair cars, right? And now look at it, you need to be a rocket scientist to repair cars.
No, that's basically where I remember my father was. He was a civil engineer. Actually, he was quite educated. In fact, when I found a letter in a chest that he always protected, not the letter but the chest, and it was a letter from his headmaster expelling the virtues this guy had, and predicting that he could go on to do a good job at a reasonable level within the world outside if he applied himself. That was the way it finished, and I thought, well, that's almost a provocation. And to be honest, Dad said to me, look, I don't really care what you do, but you must get an apprenticeship in case you have to fall back on it at a later time. And he says, I know whatever you do, just by the nature of the person you are, you'll give it your best shot. And that's basically all that was ever said. I went and got a couple of jobs, one local, one not so local, and I worked out immediately that to get the not local one would have cost me all my wages. So I thought I'll just go for the local one. And whether that was the right decision or the wrong decision, Tom, remains to be really understood. But I think I've tried all my life to give my best to whatever project I've worked on. I'm impatient to actually change things when I see things that don't work right. I'm also aware of my capability of influencing people, that if I take the lead, that other people will join the journey. And, I've met many superb friends in this industry who, they're really much more talented than me, and I feel privileged to have been given the opportunity I've had with Aviva, and the reliance that they have developed confidence in me tells me that I must have something, because I'm still doing this job 14, 15 years after I got this job, but 31 years into Aviva. So I must be doing something.
I'd agree with that. I do agree with that. So apprentices, tick-ish. There's still a lot of work to do on apprentices, and I know that you've got this, you've got the drive to assist on that as well. But looking at the future supply chain and your involvement in recycled green parts with the NSF, is the optimism, or do you think it will really work? Do you think it's a nice thing to have, or do you think it will really transform the industry?
So I sat for a long time looking at this conundrum that reclaimed parts are used by many people generally when they repair their own car, quite interestingly. But when it came to repairing a vehicle for an insurance repair, that everything seemed to be not in place to actually make it happen. So I started to look at it in a way that could better understand how other countries have developed that capability. And working for the company I work for, it's really fortunate that we've got massive business over in Canada, Poland, and different places where I could draw upon experiences to help me to understand how they've overcome some of the adversity and some of the challenges. So it was obvious to me from the very beginning in the UK, the only thing that was missing to bring confidence to consumers was that there wasn't a defined standard that was operating to allow reclaimed parts to be used and convey a message of confidence to suppliers and to end users like customers. So with some industry friends, people like Dave Cresswell, Andy Latham, some of the guys from Synetic, we sat around the table and actually drew up what I call a vanilla standard. And it was never intended an Aviva standard. It was a standard that MD could take and actually start a journey to develop it into a standard that made sense for the industry. So we had people on all sides of the industry working together round the table to actually just bare bones it up to a process, to a point where we had it in front of BS 10125 or BS British Standards, and they liked it, but they wanted 80 grand to publish it. And so I said, look, I'm backing out of it at that point. But sometime later, with the people who sat around that table, I suggested that we gave it in its current format to the VRA, the Vehicle Recyclers Association, because to me, obviously, that if they took that standard and developed it with some people's guidance like myself, that could become the mainstay and catalyst to allow reclaimed parts to become more favourably looked at and actually used in vehicle repairs. And they've done a brilliant job. Chaz Ambrose and his team have done a really wonderful, but actually rebadging the standard and revisiting areas of it that needed a bit of further development. And to engage with suppliers in the reclaimed parts market, what people would have called scrapyards years ago are now multi-million-pound businesses that have got inventories, stock control, almost like dispatch depoting. It's amazing to see the transformation in that side of the industry. And those guys, along with VRA, have actually worked with people like me to develop an assessed outcome exam, if you like, for people grading the parts, because we have to get a standard model to work so as that the confidence of the consumer can actually buy into it. So to answer your question, there's lots of reasons why it wasn't working. It just needed somebody with a bit of organisational skills to come along and understand the landscape and how to make it work.
And get it off the ground. So I guess the logistics is a very, it's an important factor to that working, right? And eBay are part of that solution in, selling the parts, getting them out to the industry. And it's a recognized, or you have to be recognized to go on that program. How successful is that at the moment? Would you?
Yeah, well, we're in a pilot phase with that. There's several elements of it you need to understand. So in terms of eBay's involvement, what we tried to create there was a secure white room that allows transactions to be actually undertaken, but we knew who the seller of the part was and who the buyer of the part was, and we could validate their commerciality, if you like, in their business as being valid and legitimate. And it's obvious why we would do that, because we don't want to incite parts being sold that have come from anything other than a proven background at austerity, where we know the provenance. So we've created to allow that transaction to take place in a very secure environment. And in our early stages, what we're really exploring is the customer journey. So how do customers actually, how does it appeal to customers? How transparent is it with customers? And actually, how receptive is the customer to allowing it to take place? So far, it's going really well. And I would say that there's work to do. One of the problems that one of the problems that you create when you start a journey like this is to identify what should and shouldn't be included in the actual parts basket.
Yeah.
So we're very prescriptive about safety consciousness, and actually won't allow anything other than components that are what are classed as cosmetic components, non-functional, to be put through the program.
Yeah.
Other people might have ideas, Tom, and that can itself can create slight disconnect and confusion. So it's about trying to actually get this standard that we've created with the VRA to actually be embedded in the industry, to recognise at all sorts of sides of the industry what good looks like and what can be done and what should be done, as opposed to what should never be done.
No, I get it. I've seen the standard and I think it's really good. I mean, the grading of the parts, I really like. You've built in the EV model as well. You know, I absolutely love the provenance of the parts as well, to know that you're actually dealing with authentic parts that have come from an authentic vehicle and it's being recycled. One of the things I think about when I think of green parts, and you know, the repairers using them, I think, you know, most repairers will like to use green parts because they know it's genuine, it's going to fit, and it's got the same, you know, strength and integrity as the part that the vehicle was designed for. The consumer, on the other hand, if you were buying a policy, and I'm not talking about Aviva, I'm just talking generally here now, Adam.
Yeah, generally.
Consumer buying a policy, they need to be brought into the story and the journey, don't they? Front end, to say, if you've got an accident, we could potentially use green parts on your vehicle. And I guess we're privileged because we know how to repair vehicles. We know what the journey is. And I'd much rather a second-hand recycled part be used than an aftermarket part where I don't know the integrity of what that part looks like. So how do you think we're going to bring the consumers on this journey?
So it's about transparency, Tom. You said it earlier, actually. So it's not about enforcing a customer to actually accept what you're saying. It's actually about giving them choices.
Yeah.
And choices start when they see the product that they're buying to insure their vehicle. So if it's very clearly illustrated how claims might be dealt with in relation to parts in the policy, and it's totally transparent, and it's fully, as far as you need to, explained, then we don't find it difficult to convince customers. And if you look at the real bulk of the insurance claims market, it's generally fleet customers that actually damage cars and get them repaired.
And it's
I couldn't tell you the percentage. I couldn't tell you the percentage.
Yeah, and it's generally the speed of the repair that's paramount anyway. So if you can accept, you know, and from a repairer's point of view, if it comes through as an A1 or A2 part, it's probably just as good as something that comes in a box anyway. All right, we're moving on from green parts, and thank you for your, you know, your honesty there. Tell me about technology then. Is it a problem, or is it just the next generation of vehicles in repair?
So I've had to look at technology right from the start. Pioneers like Henry Ford and other car makers developed technological advances. You've got to be honest, it isn't new. It's not a new problem, you know. This is not a problem, and it hasn't changed. What has changed is the rate of change, Tom, and to actually advance the motor industry to maintain credibility with technology is really the challenge, and that includes people assessing cars, deciding to repair or total loss a car, whether a repairer's got the correct skills in his workshop, and that includes the people assessing the cars in the workshop and repairing the car, is all fundamental training needs and can be dealt with quite comfortably. We've been doing that for some time.
Yeah.
We need to be mindful that technology isn't purely coming about as a result of development of the body shell aspect of a car. It's mainly electronic systems within the car. And I think a change of some skill sets within the repair process will evolve as a result of technology. And you'll begin to get computer type minded people, experts in lining up electronic systems and reading data from vehicles to actually help analyze them. It'll become skills that will be more prevalent in the future. The fundamentals of repairing a car body significantly hasn't changed. It's just the material that might have been superseded with aluminium from mild steel or from press hardened steel. These are skills that generally follow the same skill set to repair as they've always done. It's just the materials changed. People have got to learn how to adapt to the material.
It's probably more restrictive in that some of the high strength, ultra high strengths just can't be repaired and it needs to be replaced instead. And that's
and even if you look, even if you look at aluminiums, the fundamental of not pulling a car when it's damaged would have been alien to the children of my era, because we pulled cars to straighten them. These days, it's not the case. You have to make sure that you're correct repair methods, adopting the process that's aligned to the material, ensuring that you're safeguarding the material to protect the vehicle for future austerity. And by doing all those things, then you can repair cars safely. And we see some fabulous repairs getting conducted and churned out day on day out by successful people within our industry.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? So methods are paramount in this era now. You have to have methods, even if you're changing a bumper over, because if it's got any form of ADAS, then you need to know whether it needs calibrating, etc. And I guess having live methods is quite important these days as well, because the manufacturers can change methods at a drop of a hat. So having that at your fingertips, knowing what the latest method is crucial too. So, all right, so it's evolving, and the repair industry and the insurance industry just need to evolve with it. We haven't got a choice, have we?
Needed. We don't have a choice, but just to close that one off, even when you're just assessing cars these days, you need access to methods to allow you to understand what systems are operating within the car and how you can adopt techniques to repair the car. It's essential that the assessor is able to communicate that clearly to the repairer. And in many cases, the repairer will be aware, but in some cases, they overlook things that are obvious to the assessor. And that's where the importance of having engineer activity or involvement is really essential, in my view.
Yeah, no, I completely get it. I think, the vehicle damage assessors, they're the most important people in the body shop, because they're right in the business for the body shop, and B, crucially, they know what's going to be repaired in the body shop. And if they haven't got the right skill set, then that vehicle shouldn't be going in.
That's one of the that you have to make sure the customer understands. When you're looking at assessing a vehicle, you need to explain it to the customer in a simple way that they can understand the reason why you can't effectively repair cars in every workshop that they might choose to elect to repair their car. It's not about being picky over the workshop. It's about knowing that the skills and the equipment is in place to allow people to repair the car correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Capability is king. So
capability.
What are the main, so we're gonna come off that one a minute. So what are the main inroads that you have accomplished in Aviva as technical manager in the last 15 years? What would you say is your biggest triumph?
So making sure that the staff that work for Aviva assessing cars are fully competent in their role. That's been a challenge in itself, because we've got engineers working for us who have got ATA VDA just as a measure of continuous development. They go through that program all the time. We also have, every engineer is also ATA EV, electric vehicle qualifications. And we spend an inordinate amount of money, believe it or not. My boss is smiling at me for this, training engineers who everybody believes are experts. Year on year, we develop their skills further to make sure we maintain their level of understanding of technology, to make sure they're comfortable and consistently accurate when they assess cars. And we don't get that many problems, Tom. And I think that's down to our approach to continual development.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, CPD is paramount. So, it's crucial, especially, it isn't just the repairers, it's the engineers that are in, communicating with the repairers on the repair. If they're on the same wavelength, that makes it so much easier, I would have thought.
Yeah, the engineers that work for us actually are constantly reviewed in terms of their outputs. We do QAs, we
Yeah,
do some auditing. We actually, we're not doing it to actually catch people out. It's there as a mechanism of coaching and development to allow us to assist people to fulfill their potential, to make sure they're fully competent, to make sure there's no gaps in their knowledge base. That's the purpose. So if I had to answer your question, the accomplishment is that Aviva have been around 300 years, and actually I would feel guilty if I had left it in a worse state than I found it.
okay. That is quite a triumph. And I know personally that you actually undertake these exams yourself.
Yeah, I've been lead by example. There's nothing wrong with actually.
I didn't say there was.
leading.
I just know personally that, when we were doing the salvage code and I was chairing that little group there, you undertook the salvage exam. And I know that you've done BSI, ATA, and it's just, it's incredible at your position that you undertake those examinations, accreditations. I think it's really good.
Thank you. Don't ask somebody to do what you can't do yourself is my motto. Be all you can be. I've got all the catchphrases that you can imagine. Leading from the front, Tom, has basically helped me to get the support and support from the team of engineers. They're fantastic people. All of them have been there many, many years in Aviva. We generally have people from the start of their career as assessors till the time they retire. And we're quite proud of that. But these guys are also human beings that need to actually respect people above them. And I think they gain respect when they see you doing the same as them, rolling your sleeves up, going and assessing cars. I sat an 88 EV at 6:30 in the morning at Thatcham once because I couldn't fit it in my diary any other time. It's actually a pleasure because you can then talk with confidence about what they face when they go to do these things.
Yeah. No, I think it's really powerful. And I think, building a budget for training is one of the first principles that a repairer should start putting into their annual diary, because
for sure,
there's just so much going on. And so what is the biggest challenge you've faced in the last 10 years then, Adam? Again, challenge absolutely anything. Throw it on the floor.
Well, I could, the biggest challenge I've faced in the last 10 years is watching my wife struggle with her health.
Right.
She was in her 40s when she developed a condition called COPD, which is quite protracted now, and I really struggle to see how through the pain. I feel really amazed at her strength and resilience, and I only wish I could alleviate that pain that she's constantly in. That would be the challenge I've faced in life. I've been very fortunate and blessed with my health. I've never been off work. In fact, I've been off work in my whole working life 2 days. Since 13, and Liz unfortunately can't work because of her condition. And if I had a magic wand, I would wave it over her because she's a fantastic person. And to be able to live with a sort of workaholic like me, and somebody who pushes myself generally, and be able to smile every time I see her, tells you something about the person that's inside.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's tough watching someone suffer like that. And
it's hard, but you've got to live your life, Tom.
No, I know.
And you have to try and manage whatever situation you're in to the best of your ability without actually becoming downtrodden and resentful.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm just trying to say that, watching someone with a critical illness is sometimes harder than having the illness yourself.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. It's one of these difficult things.
So I appreciate you sharing that as well, Adam, because that's quite personal. So let's go on to a bit of insurers and repairers. So do you think the NBRA could work alongside insurers to try and bring some harmony to the industry?
I definitely think collaboration is one of the secrets. So my involvement, or where I first got involved with NBRA, was back in about 1991, believe it or not, when I attended a meeting they set up. It was a joint meeting of body shops and insurers to discuss labour rates at that time, 1991. Tom, that's a long time ago.
I won't tell you how old I was then, but I was young.
Yeah, you were a twinkle, buddy. We all sat around. Lots of people contributed in a healthy discussion, and we left the room. And on the way out the room, one of the guys bumped my arm like that and said, "Don't worry, pal. On Monday, if you ask me to do something for you, I'll do it at your rate." And that taught me a little lesson about business. And actually, I know you can't fix pricing. It's not about that. But what I always aspire to do, Tom, is actually pay a fair rate for the job. And I think that's what we can do. And I think that when I read the values of NBRA and any other commercial business, I don't think they're that different. I think the problem is lost in translation and actually often misunderstood as to what the actual proposition is.
Yeah. So, okay. So what collaboration in the industry is challenging, right?
I don't actually have that problem in my role, but I think my role sits one step removed from a commercial role where I rates and challenges. My role generally allows me to interface with repairers, mainly in a situation where I'm helping them, mainly where I'm actually solve a problem that they've got that actually is presenting an issue for them, and I'm able to bring assistance to it, either through my contacts through the vehicle manufacturers or repair methods or whatever the issue is.
Yeah.
So I don't really see that disconnect. I've always had good relations with repairers. I speak openly and transparently as far as I'm allowed. And I think there's different reasons why some of the challenges exist. And I think we both are aware of that, but to solve them, it won't be done on our own. Nobody could do it on their own.
No, and that's why I'm saying about collaboration. So, if you had 3 different insurers in a room, it would be hard to get them to agree on one specific commercial term, I think. And as the National Body Repair Association, we try to gain a good relationship with an insurance company. And obviously we've got the repairers' interests at heart. Yeah, that's what we do. So bear with me because I'm going to go a bit off piste, right? So labour rates have been what they have been, and I'm not talking about Aviva here, I'm just talking generally, okay? So labour rates have been what they've been for several years. What's the average labour rate in the marketplace at the moment? If you're a recommended repairer, probably anything from £26.50 up to say 34, 35. It ranges on that spectrum. And some of them provide the parts, some of them you provide the parts, you give a parts discount. And then there's a paint index as well. But over that, say 5 years, has the labour rate, do you think, kept in line with inflation and technology and investment? Like I said,
it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
But what I would say to you is this, Tom, that labour rate or any commercial term that's agreed is done through willingness and discussion. And what I would say, so Aviva operate body shops of their own, and we understand the commerciality that can be obtained and actually successful through those programs. Now, if we can run a body shop and make money out of it, and I would say that tells a story about the people that are managing body shops as well, that if they apply the same logic, they can do the same. Yeah.
But my point I'm trying to get at is, if you set out a contract, and some contracts are 12 months, some contracts are 5 years, right? Which sounds a little bit ludicrous, because in 5 years, a lot can happen. And if you've got an cost of running a business, inflation over an annual basis, then surely that should be reflected in the labour rate within a 12 or an 18 or a 24-month basis.
It's not just about labour rate though, Tom. It's about all the commercial.
Yeah,
it's about some of the whole is the best way I'd describe it to you. And what I would say is that people are actually still, our repairers are still actually actively looking to gain certain contracts within the market.
I know.
It tells you that those contracts must offer something, or they wouldn't be trying to get hold of them.
Oh, Adam, I know there's a lot of contracts out there for grabs. I know there's some pretty despicable ones with bottom line discounts, horrendous labour rates, and because the volume has been at an all-time low, repairers are in a corner having to take these, and some being busy fools as a result of that. And I think, all I'm trying to say is, should there be an annual review on not only labour rates, you're right. I mean, I think the paint materials and the paint index, that's a bit fictitious as well, because you're being charged, I don't know, £250 to £400 to repaint a couple of panels on a vehicle, and the cost of the paint is probably 60 or 70 quid. So it could be right sized with the right people in a room, I think. And I'm not saying that's you, and I'm not saying that's Aviva. All I'm after is your thoughts on it. That's all.
So my thoughts on it are, I've been in this industry 41 years, and I've heard these magic words all throughout that career. Yeah. And actually the industry's progressing. So I think there's people in the industry who can actively overcome the challenges that some of the constraints bring. They've still successfully run a business for the last X amount of years. And I think that will continue, Tom. And I don't think it's any different to any other business. If you talk to Jose Mourinho and people, they believe they've got a hard egg in their world. And we hear that challenge from different manufacturers, from different challenges across different industries. So I think it's about agreeing a set of terms that allow you as a business to be able to actually fulfill your business. And actually, as long as you spend the money wisely, then you'll be successful. That's my view. And I don't one aspect to it, because I believe it's the sum of the whole that actually dictates it. And there's some really clever people that have made good money over years in this industry, and equally some people have gone out of business. That's more about the acumen of running a business, I believe.
No, and I get it. And we touched on one that could be quite a good win-win for insurers and repairers, which is recycled parts, because there could be good margin in that for everyone to benefit and the consumer. So no, I appreciate your honesty. And would you be willing to be part of a group to discuss that openly?
I'm quite happy to participate in anything that Aviva allow me to do. I'm an employee, like.
No, I know you are.
No, I'm not averse to being involved in that type of group. So yeah, as long as they're happy to allow that to sanction. I do have quite a liberal view and a liberal accountability, but people that manage me know that I can actually add value to discussion. So I wouldn't say no. That's what I would say.
No, and I think your view would be appreciated because you're very open-minded and you're not shy in coming forward either. So that would be a benefit, I think. So if we're going to run out of time in a minute, and if you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
If I had to change one thing, I would license it, and I would license it for different reasons. It's not just one-dimensional. So if technology continues to develop as it's going, and you've got aspects like vehicle crime and lots of different problems that are within the industry that could be solved by bringing a licensed approach to repairing cars. One is that, and I don't mean that just for repairing cars, I'm talking about parts, I'm talking about reclaimed parts, I'm talking about all aspects of the industry could be brought to the right level, I guess, in the perception of consumers. Yeah. Because if you're an aircraft technician and you're licensed to repair an aircraft, and we're working on vehicles of the same type of build and quality, then why is there any difference? That's the question I would say to you.
Yeah, well, I get into a motor vehicle a lot more frequently than I step onto a plane, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So if I had to change one thing, I would probably license body shops. I would license the people repairing the cars, and I would make sure there was licensing further downstream for suppliers where vehicle crime can actually exist, and there's very little visibility of it.
No, I've got some thoughts on that, but we're not going to go there today. So last question for you then, Adam. What do you think will have the biggest impact on the industry in the next 5 years?
So the biggest challenge that the industry faces, as I see it, is attracting the right type of people to join the ranks of the apprentices to be the next generation of the repair process.
Yeah.
So it's all about people, this industry. We need good people coming into the industry, and we've got some brilliant people coming into the industry, but we need a hell of a lot more to actually fill the shoes of people like me who are leaving the industry one day soon.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, you got some repairers out there that are wholeheartedly, being immersed with apprentices. I mean, the Gemini group, they're brilliant. I mean, when I was working at IRG, they were taking on apprentices and building their future, because that's what it is. And you're right. And, our industry definitely deliver. It's a talent pool for insurers and other corporate businesses as well. So, no, I think that's perfect, actually, Adam. Absolutely perfect. Well, that's it for today. I've really enjoyed my time talking with you, Adam.
I've enjoyed my time too, Tom.
I think you're an absolute star, and I hope we can do another one of these in the future. And is there any questions I forgot to ask you, Adam? Are there any questions that you?
No, there's not. I've got no real questions. I came with a very open mind towards it, and what I would say is it's been a pleasure. I enjoy these things, and yeah, I'm just grateful that I can actually contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your time. Thank you, Adam.